keep wondering, what was it? What was it that the wise men saw or experienced that truly convinced them that the baby before them, that they were kneeling to, that they were offering these gifts to, was indeed the Messiah, the King that they had so arduously journeyed to find? There is that very funny scene at the beginning of The Life of Brian, where the three kings walk in and they don't get it quite right. They come into the wrong house. It looks like a perfectly possible house where Jesus might be born. It's a little house, and there's a woman with a baby, and they come in and they kneel and they offer the gifts, and they try to explain to the mother what myrrh is. It's a balm. A balm? No, it's a balm. A balm? What do you give a balm to a baby for? Well, after a lot of bantering about that, they discover that, in fact, the baby has been born next door that they want to visit. So they grab all the gifts, knock the mother over, and go where the action is really happening. Clearly really happening. Next door where there's shepherds and angels and lots of commotion. Clearly a sign that a king, that something exciting is happening. Now, if we take a close look at this story in Matthew, we don't see any angels or shepherds or commotion. If we look at the story of Matthew and take it for what it is, it's a very different story of Christmas than the one that we see in Luke. There are two Christmas stories in our Bible, one in Luke and one in Matthew, and they're very different for very different purposes. And the story of Matthew is sort of like everything is intentionally undercover, under wraps. It's like you don't know anything is going on. That's why Herod and his court have no idea that a baby is born. In fact, Mary and Joseph aren't even in a cave behind an inn. There's no census. They're just in a house. In Matthew's story, the possibility is that they lived in Bethlehem. This was just their typical rancher in North Hollywood. You know, nothing spectacular. Not to say anything about you little ranchers in North Hollywood. I didn't mean to sound like that. Whoops. My foot tastes good. But you know what I mean? It's like nothing special. And yet the wise men come here and they give their lives. They bow down. They offer gifts. They even give their lives choosing to go a different route back to their homeland, which, if you look at a map of the Middle East, means that probably the way they got home was right through the harsh Arabian desert. That would be the only way to get home. They couldn't go the way they came, which would have taken them back through the palace, Herod's palace, where he might find out now where the baby's born and come and destroy the baby. And that route is much easier to travel back to the east where they live, where there's plenty of water and inns and people. They make a huge sacrifice. There must have been something about that experience, encountering that baby in the most unremarkable of places. It gave them the idea that all of this was right and real and worth it. I was wrestling about this on Wednesday with Sukumar, who was here with me, and he came up with a very interesting observation. And we'll find this in the story at verse 10. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. Indeed, they followed this star and stopped at this house, which I don't know about you, but I'm not so sure that would be enough information to really get me over the hump after I've been riding the hump for some time. You know, just that here's where the star is and this is where you're going to go, especially because there's nothing there to see. But they were suddenly overwhelmed with joy. And it wasn't even a joy that they experienced looking at the baby. This joy, we're told, they have even before that baby is witnessed. It's like this mysterious filling of some deep, happy, peaceful, powerful emotion that just comes upon them. No explanation, it just does. And perhaps it's that experience that leads them into understanding what's going on and wanting to do whatever it takes to make what's going on nurtured and grow and indeed change the world. Joy is more than a nice feeling that comes to us when something we want falls in our laps. Something that we even expect is going to be happy makes us happy. In our book on joy, Champagne for the Soul, Mike Mason says that joy is also, and more powerfully, a presence. It's an experience we have when we encounter a presence. When God comes to visit. The sign that God has come to visit us, we experience joy. Sort of like, but of course not like, when the dentist is drilling in your mouth and hits a nerve and you're just body like, whoa! That's what the experience can and should be like when God comes to visit. Even though we may dismiss those feelings or think that God is with us when we're not feeling that, Mike Mason will go so far to say is if you're not experiencing joy, you are not experiencing God. That your back is turned from God. And you need to open yourself up to a joy that indeed is here in perhaps a surprising way, but it's just waiting to fill you. No matter where you are in the journey, no matter what you may be encountering. I must say that I am so surprised that right now I'm feeling a lot of joy. After I got home from my Christmas holiday, and my mother is very ill, just crippled by depression, and she's in a home now, and is about 90 pounds, and mostly doesn't open her eyes anymore, and seems to be so dismissive of everything. And my father doesn't know what to do with all this, and he comes to us for advice, and he's not listening, and it's very frustrating, and it made for a very tough Christmas. I kept praying, and I kept thinking, I know that even though this is really hard, I know there's joy. There's joy to be experienced, to be discovered in bits and pieces, and to know that is there, even if I'm not feeling particularly happy. And I must say that I'm experiencing so much joy, even though all these tough things are happening. And because I'm feeling joyful, I think I'm dealing with my dad a lot better. And with other things, I'm just able to deal with it better because I'm in that positive, powerful, God-filled place. In fact, when I think back about my call to ministry, I remember, and I'll tell that story some other time, but it was preceded by this profound experience of surprising joy. It was out in the desert, and it was in the afternoon. I was just sitting there, and suddenly I do remember, just this wave of peace and contentedness and harmony came over me, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. Next thing I knew, I was called into ministry. God had come to visit, and then God was able to give me direction and the power, whatever is needed to go ahead. And I wonder if that's what's happening in our Epiphany story is a story about how God works in that way. We open ourselves up to joy, it brings us great happiness, and then it strengthens us for the journey ahead. A journey that we make joyfully, not with complaining, not with bitterness, not with fear, even if the journey is really hard. I so love that our church's mission, the Comedy Church, is not just about making people laugh. It's about helping people experience the joy of Christ. The joy that comes with knowing that God is present right here, right now, no matter who we are, no matter what we've done. That joy is filling us. And it may come to us in all sorts of different ways. But we claim it, and we're continually learning new ways to claim it. And it also empowers us to go forth and to help others find joy. And to find in that joy the strength to do important things, to reach out and love others. So the easiest ways to love people is when we're feeling joyful. That's why it was so much fun and so powerful when a few weeks ago we went out and did now where did I leave that frankincense scavenger hunt? There were a whole bunch of us here. We broke into teams of 3. And everybody got $20 and about an hour to go out and see how much good they can do and how much fun they could have, and to come back with their stories and win a prize. We had, I think, 6 teams that went out, and when they came back, they just, for one thing, they walked back into this space, and they were just aglow. Everybody was just so smiling and so excited to share their story of the way they discovered together how to spread some joy and have some fun. One group went and bought, lots of them started at the 99-cent store, went and bought some gloves and some Christmas ornaments, and then went to the subway stand in North Hollywood and gave gloves and scarves to people that didn't have them. It was cold. And then they had Christmas ornaments that they decorated the trees around the subway with. They said, this was like guerrilla decorating. It was really fun. Another group went and took their money, bought some Christmas cards, put a little extra money in, and then put, they had a bunch of cards. In one card they put $20, in one card they put $10, in one card they put $5, in one card they put $1. Then they had a bunch of other cards, and they went to Ralph's. And they just went up to some shop and said, pick a card. Maybe it's got some money in it, maybe it doesn't. It was such a fun game. People got so into just the idea of playing this goofy little game, maybe winning something, maybe not. They said the whole grocery store was transported just by this little gift of joy. Another group decided to focus in on one particular person that seemed like they could use some help. And they spent some time talking with him, finding out what he really needed, a phone so he could talk to his daughter in Chicago, and so he could get calls in case for jobs. And we bought him a phone and a month of phone conversation, and invited him to the Christmas party that we were having afterwards, and I hear he's doing really well. He's got a job now, and there's looking into apartments and all sorts of cool things. I mean, all sorts of cool ways that joy and goodness happen in just an hour. And I'm so excited that we're planning another one for next Sunday, and I forgot to make that announcement. We're planning it for next Sunday. And I hope you can all join us, and it's going to be something that we're regularly going to be doing at the Comedy Church, just going out and having these fun opportunities to be in mission in quirky and fun sort of ways. And we're starting something else that's really fun. We're starting this adventure in the musical Godspell. And how many of you guys know the show Godspell? How many of you know a little bit? And know kind of, what's it about? What do you guys know about Godspell? It's the story of Jesus, okay. And what else do we know about Godspell? It's got lots of music and dancing.
The Gospel according to
Matthew. It's got the Gospel according to Matthew. It's got a little bit of other stuff in it, but mostly Matthew. What else do we, when you think about Godspell, what do you think of? Yes?
Well, John the Baptist is a singer, right?
John the Baptist is a singer. It's colorful and fun, right? Yes. It's you don't see Godspell with people in black and with sorry faces, and there's not much in the way of funeral dirges when it comes to Godspell. It's very bright and fun and joyful. Yes?
It's a comedy.
And it's a comedy. It is a comedy, even though we have all the whole story about it. The intention of Godspell was to tell the story of Jesus in a fun and festive way, because when we do something that's fun and festive, not only do we find that resurrection joy that's in the story, but we're empowered to change the world. And that was were the two reasons that they did this play Godspell. And that's the two reasons that we want to do our own version and explore improvisationally some of the songs and some of the texts that the songs point to. And some of the ways that we can perform it here in this space, as well as some of the ways we can go out into the world and perform it there, just at parks and along the street, or down at Skid Row, or wherever we want to do it. We're going to take it, parts of it, and film it, or do whatever, and just have a lot of fun, and discover how much joy we can discover, and we can be fueled by, and can just come upon us as as we say yes to the adventure that God is drawing us on. So, what I want us to do today, this is a little crazy, and our casting is a little, not quite what I was expecting, so we're going to do something very improvisationally. But what I would like you to do is to think about somebody, whether it's somebody famous, or somebody in your life, or just yourself, that that you would like to imitate talking about Jesus. And it doesn't have to be, it could be anybody, just anybody that comes to mind. It could be somebody out, famous, or your mom, or you could even just do a blah blah. Just even do a blah blah. Karen, I was going to ask how you might talk about Jesus. What character might you use? Just pick anything. Stand up and just start talking about Jesus. And be the right hand.
I think that Jesus is really cool because he gives me stuff, really cool stuff. I don't know, being alive. Thank you, Jesus. Or is that God? I'm not really sure. I get a little confused.
There's Karen. She's being an expert. How would you describe Jesus? What character do you use?
Oh, excuse me. I can only do one really good impersonation.
That's
Should I
right.
do it?
Yeah.
You need to move the microphone back. So, if I had to think of the most coolest person alive, I would probably pick Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah, there we go. How about you, Stephen? How would you describe it? How about you?
Sorry, I still can't talk. It would probably be through my mother because she speaks about Jesus the most. She has a Midwestern accent, and she'd probably be like, Steve, Jonah was inside that whale, and people try to tell you different, but he was in the whale.
I want you guys to stand up for a minute. I want you to stand up. We've got our characters here. We've got these three, and I want you just to do your voices, because the way that the story of God's Spell begins is with a thing that they call the Tower of Babel. And the Tower of Babel is a musical piece where there's different philosophers like Plato and Socrates and Nietzsche and Leonardo da Vinci and Martin Luther and all sorts of important people, and they're all kind of talking on top of one another about Jesus. So I thought maybe we could have a few of our contemporary experts just share a little bit. Why don't you just go talk on top of one another about Jesus just for a couple minutes and give us a sense of what the Tower of Babel might look like in our day and age today. So, just try.
Guess what today's secret word is? Manger.
Manger.
You know who's wearing a manger, right? If anybody says manger, scream it out. Let's try it.
He was great manger.
Manger.
Here we go. All right, now I want everybody to stand. I want everybody to stand and remember who their character was. Because this is, everybody stand. I want everybody to stand. And what we're going to do is we are all going to be the prologue of Godspell. And the way this works is that we're all just going to start talking about Jesus in whatever